welcome to Tax Matters. My name is Pearl Namaka.
And I am Chiamaka Ohaochi.
May 29 has finally come. Of course, you know that May 29 is a day set aside in Nigeria for the change of baton from one administration to another. At the federal level, this year's ceremony was the inauguration of the government of President Muhammadu Buhari for his second term.
At a colorful ceremony held at Eagle Square in Abuja, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo and President Muhammadu Buhari took the oath of office and by so doing rededicated themselves to the service of the country.
As part of our contribution to the search for good governance and sustainable development and a consolidation of the achievements recorded in the first term, our crew went out to find out from the good people of Nigeria what their expectations are of the Buhari administration in its second term.
Of course, as you would expect, the focus is on taxation, on revenue generation. After all, the program is Tax Matters.
In 2018, a total of 5.320 trillion naira was collected as taxes by the Federal Inland Revenue Service (FIRS). This is the highest ever collected as federal taxes in Nigeria. Taxes have become an important source of revenue, enabling the government to provide greater infrastructural developments in our country. Tax revenues enable government to provide more roads, more railways, more bridges, more housing, more schools, more students in schools, more hospitals, more security, and generate more power. Because Nigeria deserves more. Only your taxes can make all our dreams come true. This message is from the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS. It pays to pay your tax.
What advice do you have for the Buhari government now in the area of taxation, now that they have begun their second term?
The first thing is review all the tax laws. Review all the tax laws, make it more convenient for people to pay tax, be more transparent. I know this government came in on the mantra of transparency and fight war against corruption. But we need to see more transparency in what government is doing. Both the executive and the legislature. You remember there had been so much noise about the budget of the National Assembly is not transparent. We don't know how much they are taking. We don't know how much they are spending. Such things discourage people from paying tax. But when there's transparency at every level, the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature, I think the government will be better.
My advice is that whilst government is desperate to generate revenue through taxation, I think the collection mechanisms should wear a more friendly face. I think overly aggressive methods of tax collection would not help government at this time, especially when neighboring countries like Ghana are wearing a more friendly face, and not only that, are providing the infrastructure that would make life easier for these companies to run. Power is a major case in point. So, you know, if we continue to use very aggressive methods in tax collection, then we're going to have a problem. I think my advice would be to try and have the buy-in of the citizens as to why they should pay their taxes. It's a longer journey, but it's one that government should actually embark on, so that there's a willingness on the part of the people to pay tax, and also to clean up the entire tax administration machinery. When I say clean up, thank God there's a huge reduction now in corruption because certain systems are now being put in place, but we still have a lot to do in that regard. We need to also work on our laws. We need a major overhaul of our tax laws. I'm a lawyer, like I said, and bring our laws to synchronize with current business practices and development as well.
Okay, let me say at this point that I'm a tax administrator, and to the best of my understanding, this government is supporting the revenue authorities to do their work. That is why, for instance, the Federal Inland Revenue Service was able to bring in an amount that has never been brought in the history of this country, 5.3 trillion naira. If government was not supporting the FRS, that will not happen. And I guess that spirit of support is still going on, not just for the FRS as a federal body, but I'm sure the support even goes to the states, because what is due to the states, government have always given them. And some revenue services, even at the state level, are doing very great and wonderfully. So with this support, I expect it to continue. I expect the government to continue to support the relevant tax authorities in terms of not just facilities to let them work, but even in terms of our taxes, our tax laws that are obsolete. Efforts are being done for these tax laws to be upgraded to meet up with the current trend of doing business. And if that happens, I think we will be going much further.
What advice do you have to the Buhari government in the area of taxation as it begins its second term?
They need to look at the laws. Some of the laws are dated. The laws on minimum tax, the laws on excess dividend tax, and of course things like commencement rule and all of that. So clearly, once they come into government, they need to work closely with the National Assembly to ensure that those areas are quickly dealt with. And I can tell you, if those areas are fixed, then you're probably going to see a significant jump in the tax revenue.
Once the Buhari government collect tax and citizens can see the corresponding benefit, people will be willing to pay without a fight. That is it.
Globally, if you look at growing economies or developed economies, the emphasis on tax is so much. And we are seriously under-taxed in the system. What I mean under-taxed is that a lot of things that people go away with in Nigeria. You see a lot of beautiful houses, mansions, shopping malls. You're surprised that one element of tax is not paid. If you come to Abuja, you wonder the wealth of this nation, the kind of things you see. My own advice is that be more focused on tax. Tax is the one that regenerates economies.
We have so many bills, executive bills. We have so many bills in the House. Those bills should actually be passed, and then we'll see how we go from there.
My advice is bring in other mineral resources into the tax nets. Then, again, increase the base. Like I said, encourage entrepreneurs to register their companies and give them a tax holidays. And that, yes, in the short term, it may not be too much, but with time, we'll get to a point that people will be paying tax without knowing that they have started planning for their tax 5 years back. So I think that is the way forward. We should bring in those other minerals into the tax net, formalize those mining sectors, and that will increase the base without necessarily increasing the rates of taxes for those that are actually paying tax today.
The Federal Inland Revenue Service FIRS calls on all corporate organizations operating in Nigeria to register for the purpose of payment of taxes and obtain a tax identification number TIN. All registered companies must obtain a tax identification number immediately from the nearest FIRS office. You can also collect and return tax registration forms from the Federal Inland Revenue Service Engagement and Enlightenment Tax Teams, FEAT, on compliance checks exercise in your area. A company which is yet to commence business after at least 6 months of incorporation must pay a pre-operational levy of 20,000 naira in the first year and 25,000 naira for subsequent years to obtain its tax clearance certificate TCC. Note that filing and payment of VAT and withholding tax returns must be done on or before the 21st day of every month. Register for VAT. File all tax returns as and at when due. Be a responsible corporate citizen of Nigeria. It pays to pay your tax. This message is from the Federal Inland Revenue Service.
The program is Tax Matters, and on this episode, we are feeling the pulse of the populace. We are finding out what advice Nigerians have for the Muhammadu Buhari administration as it begins its second term. There seems to be some consensus with regards to the way forward. Our respondents are of the opinion that the government should give more support to the Federal Inland Revenue Service to enable it perform its duties better.
And of course, that goes to the states, where the governors are expected to empower their internal revenue services.
The respondents also want the tax laws to be brought in tune with present-day realities. All obsolete laws, they say, should be amended.
And of course, taxpayers must see their money in action.
Yes, taxpayers' money in action. We move on. How does the government go about generating the much-needed resources to provide necessary infrastructure?
What are the ways you feel the government can generate more revenue through taxation?
All right. I know that tax is a major means of revenue generation for federal government and both state and other parts of the government. But you know, in Nigeria, tax has always been a little bit an alien concept. It has not fully developed in this country. Although I must give a kudos to this administration as well as the I think tax chairman or something like that. You know, the man is really working. He has introduced a lot of improvements and innovations that has actually enhanced tax generation in this country. And apart from that, I'm also seeing that they are trying to, you know, make it easy with the Nigerian populace so that even though the government needs to generate its economy from the tax, it won't be a burden to the citizenry. Otherwise, it will not become a serious hardship on us. I know that there are a lot of people in this country that can actually pay that tax without blinking an eyelid. I remember there was a time they wanted to introduce something like a luxury goods tax. Because, you know, there are a lot of people, I'm not referring to any particular person or any particular group of persons, but I know there are a lot of people who own more than 10 cars in their compound. And of course, you know that they can only drive one car at once. If they can levy taxes on those cars, I think it will reduce the money they invest in those cars that are just lying there, wasting without using them. So the money will now go into the government pocket, and they will use it for better development, infrastructure, and whatever they want to do with it. You also remember, like in Abuja here, you have a lot of houses unoccupied. Why? Because it is easy for them to just steal money or get money however they want and then build the houses, because they know that if it is kept in the bank, EFCC might find it or something. So they'll just go build those houses and leave it like that. If they can levy taxes on all those houses as well, it will now make them to reduce the amount placed on the rent of those houses and then let it to ordinary Nigerians. And also they can sell it cheaper so that average Nigerian can easily buy a house.
It's obvious that government needs more money, more revenue to fund its activities. Yeah. So how can government generate more revenue through taxation?
Well, the first thing is a genuine commitment by the government towards the people it's ruled or it's ruling over. That's the first commitment. And then secondly, we need a reorientation, because once the people are sensitized enough to know that the government is responsive to their yearnings, you don't need to bring a soothsayer to tell you that taxes will be paid naturally. You don't need to force anybody. So the sincerity of purpose by the government will create a reorientation in the minds of Nigerians to start paying taxes.
One of the ways government could get money through tax to fund its project. There are people who are earning bogus salaries. I think they should tax them more. The tax should be proportional to what you earn. There are people who have businesses and they do not pay tax. So I think government should look in these directions, see how they can tax them, let them pay tax from their businesses. I think there are other, government can decide to a way of maybe providing funds for people to go into businesses. By so doing, they can equally tax them, and they can make more money from those kind of processes.
Well, I feel the richer should pay more and then the poorer should pay less. That's what I believe, so that to make the equation balanced. Yeah.
While we see other countries doing something serious on taxation, mostly property tax. You see houses in Abuja, Asukuru, Maitama, and all the places spread around. Nobody cares to know who owns this building and whether they should pay tax on it. That is why the huge amount of money that's supposed to be taken from tax, from this property tax, are being running out. So I think government should look to that way and make them to pay tax. It should be compulsory anyway, because you cannot take a land and build a house and allow the house to waste away without doing anything, and nobody stays there. You see the rocks being blessed by foreign companies. Do they pay adequate tax? That is the next question. They don't. And so for that, government should also look into that.
Government can increase the tax base by focusing on some goods which we know are not okay for our health. Especially like tobacco. Some people smoke cigar and smoke other things like that. So government to stop such people doing that kind of thing, because it's not good to their health, government can increase the tax rate on such things. Are you hearing me? Then government as well can increase its tax by making sure that every registered company in Nigeria should pay tax. They should do what? They should pay tax. Are you hearing me? There are people who are not working with government, either in the local government, either in the state or federal government, but they are making some profit and they are not being taxed. So government should increase its tax base by locating such people. By this, they should devise a means to identify them wherever they are, and they should be able to pay tax.
I think what the government needs to do is to do their main responsibility. A main responsibility in the sense that there's basic necessities that men need, that government need to provide this. If you provide these basic necessities, it is easy. People will be willing to pay. People will be willing to pay their taxes. You don't need to force them. But if government are really sincere with themselves, let them do their own part and leave the rest for the populace. They will. I trust my people. They will pay their tax.
Well, there are simple ways they can do that one. At least we have those people going to mining. They have companies in Nigeria, and we have foreign individuals coming into the country for this business. So they make income. They generate income from that activity. They need to pay tax. At least it should be based on their annual income. What they generate, let it be something that they can do. I don't believe in increasing tax for civil servants, public office holder, because they don't generate anything for themselves. That's it. And then we talk about indigenous companies or local companies that have not registered with corporate affairs. Encourage them, let them register, provide a little incentive, then you can be able to tax them. I think these are the ways.
Okay, for me as a business student and also an entrepreneur, I think the government should create a way in such a way that the fresh graduate who just finished from school can be able to access soft loans from the bank and be able to start up their own business rather than waiting for government jobs and all of that. When there is circulation of funds, it also has a way of bringing in revenue to the government. But when there's no circulation of funds, if there's no way of income, then spending might be difficult.
Taxation, I think, is one of the sources through which government get money. But for me, I think what will help the government get money easily from taxation is when the populace begin to see the work they have done with the ones they have collected so far.
Government can increase taxation by investing money on capital projects, on industrialization of a nation, to make sure each state of the federation has one important industry or the other, and not to concentrate on one area alone, like what we are having in Lagos. I'm not against Lagos, because I grew up in Lagos, but let them decentralize localization of industry to other states that are less privileged. That is another way of increasing revenue to government. It's better than overtaxing the innocent civil servant or the armed forces or police and other military personnel. You understand? It's not good to give a civil servant 30,000 naira minimum wage and use the other hand to collect it back. It's not proper. That is not the way to govern our beloved nation, Nigeria. So there are other ways again to invest by bringing foreign investors into the country to teach us so that we will be technically aware. You understand? We will be able to acquire more technical skill or technological knowledge by allowing the foreigners who are experts to teach us on how to generate more funds.
I think the whole thing lies on the effectiveness of governments in our, in our service delivery. If the government, from the little is generating, is able to impact on the society infrastructurally and maybe social amenities, people will be encouraged on their own. They'll be motivated to want to comply with taxation and taxes.
For the government to increase revenue, for me, I would suggest we have a lot of resources here that have not been tapped. And I feel it will be an avenue for the government to invest, to bring in investors, to really tap on those resources to get more revenue. And at the same time create job opportunities for the country, for the youth, for the unemployed people that are ringing around doing nothing, to take them off the street. There's a charity begin at home. I'm from Benue State. Let's look at Benue State for an instance. Or in Benue State, we have a whole lot of natural resources that are just lying low. Nobody else ever even give it a toss. Wanted me to think about it. Example, we have a cement in Batia. They can't farm. They can't even dig wells. The soil dead, the grass don't grow up. The soil is just lying low. The whole thing is there. We have zinc. Zinc. We talk about long span. We have it in Tambi, in Benue State. We have gas. In my own village, in Mede's town, in Mede, that is where my village is, there's gas. You can't dig where. Gas is just there. Nobody has ever thought of it, or even give it a toss. To mention, but just feel. They just a whole lot. So I feel if the government really wants to talk about revenue, come on, we have more than what it takes to generate revenue.
Again, a summary will not be out of place here. How does government go about increasing revenue? According to our respondents, there's a need to introduce property tax, mining activities should be taxed, and luxury goods should be heavily taxed.
And of course, transparency and accountability on the part of government and the reorientation of the populace.
The voice of the people, they say, is the voice of God. The people have spoken, and we are very sure that President Muhammadu Buhari and Vice President Yemi Osinbajo have listened. Oga Fowler, the ball is in your court. Money, money, money. We need money.
And to our people out there, taxes are the oxygen for good governance. Resolve today to pay your taxes as and when due. And let's meet again on this platform next week for a fresh episode of Tax Matters. Of course, there is more from where all these came from. Thank you for watching.